It is 12 o'clock on the button. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. If you're joining us live or if you're watching this recording, we do want to hear from you. There is chat for the live attendees. And if you want to reach out, look for the information here in the recording on how you can connect with us. We're going to be discussing a book today. The title is Change or Die by Alan Deutschman. And this book has made the rounds in our company. This webinar's roots began with a book recommendation from our CEO, Chris Cloutier, to a few of our team members. It was such a great read. We spread it to the entire team, and we've been discussing it for the last several weeks as we've all worked through it. It's been a focal point of discussions between ourselves and then from us straight to our clients, shops that are on trial with the software, and just our friends throughout the industry and our network connections. It's great when a title starts to connect and resonate, and that's exactly what this has done. This applies to shops. Bottom line, it was not written towards shops, but every concept in here we have found a lot of meaningful connections with. One of the principles of the book is that when faced with a true life or death situation, not a figurative or imaginative one, but an actual literal life or death scenario, 9 out of 10 people cannot make the changes necessary to help themselves. When you look at our industry and look at what groups like this do, we are trying to connect with the mass part of the industry, but about 10% of shops are the ones that are getting the messages, are adopting technology, and are changing and evolving. As a component of our job here, all this team does, we work with shops on a daily basis to help them accomplish change. And we want to know why it's successful for some and why it is not for others. I'm going to introduce the panel here. I have Michael Catullo with us. He's one of our senior onboarding specialists. Michael, go ahead and wave. Say hello.
How are we doing today?
Good, good. And we have Scott Smyer. He's been with us now for a while. Scott is one of our trainers. Go ahead and say hello, Scott.
Hey, everybody.
And our newest addition to the team, Levi Linsman. Levi, go ahead and say hello.
How is everybody? Glad to be here.
These guys are fantastic. I think everyone's going to enjoy the discussion. As we launch into this, you'll see exactly why they are my panel day, and I'm super proud to have them. Thanks for joining me for this, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for the invite.
Hey, anytime. Now, lead off question number one here. Why are some shops successful and others not so much?
You know what, I'll jump onto this one for us, Craig. I find when I'm training, I come across kind of 3 different types of shops. There's the innovative shops. And these are the shops that always are going after the latest and greatest. They're always looking for ways to make themselves more efficient, ways to make themselves more transparent, and ways to increase their bottom lines in a way that makes other people happy and it makes their employees happy. The other type of shop I find are the followers. They're the ones who come along a little later in the process. And it's because you hear in my 20 group, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so all got this and they're loving it and doing really well with it. So I feel we need it. And the last type of shop I have is the dying shop. And it's basically a shop that is very comfortable in that this is the way we've always done it, and this is the way we're going to do it until we close the doors. In some cases, the shop is, an older shop, and the owner is ready to close the doors and sell the building and retire off to Florida, and that's fine. But if a shop wants to pass on the legacy of their business to another generation, they're going to want to put themselves in a position to at least get into the following where they're still adapting to newer technologies. You see this a lot in something we've used before called the Kano model. And the Kano model is showing things that become delighters, which are things that are unique to what your shop does, things that people find and want to come to you because you're the only shop who does these types of things. It harkens back to the first time coffee shops started having Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. It was a very big idea, and people flocked to that particular shop solely for the Wi-Fi purpose. Now you can't walk into any building whatsoever without being invited to join that company's public Wi-Fi access. So it's less of a delighter and more of something that must be had, which falls into that follower group. This is something that we're actually going to be hitting on in our new learning modules that we will be releasing shortly is in the Kano model. So I'm going to kind of stay off of that a little bit. But to relate this to what I hear in a standing point, it's the excuses. The excuses, shops that make excuses and people who make excuses are never going to be able to succeed in adapting something new. That excuse is holding you back. And it's the same excuses I've used on myself. 2 years ago, I went to the doctor's for a routine checkup, and the doctor tells me, Mike, your blood pressure is high. You now have stage 1 hypertension. I'm 41 years old. And I always thought myself to be in fairly good shape. And the doctor looked at me and said, well, Mike, you could stand to lose about 50 pounds, and you need to get more exercise, and you need to start eating better. What are your diet habits? And at the time, I was eating, fast food, or if I thought I was eating healthy, having a sandwich, but the sandwich had mayonnaise and processed meat on it and cheese. And
well, let me ask this too, Michael. Did you feel sick?
I did not at the time. I did not at the time feel sick because it was only stage 1 hypertension. I felt very normal.
A serious issue, and obviously that would be something that should be very concerning. And I feel like that's the reaction that a lot of people have to the title like this, and change or die. It's like, psh, we're doing fine.
Exactly.
Right.
And I would make all the same excuses. It's too expensive to eat healthy. I don't have time to eat healthy. I'm always on the run. I'm always going, and I don't have time to eat healthy. And it's the same excuses I hear in the shop dormant. This is the way we've always done it. It takes too much time. I am not good with technology. These are the same exact things and when I hear those excuses, if those excuses start to become their mantra, their calling card, every time I discuss something with the shop, that shop is not going to be able to adapt to anything new because they're too bad living in their fears and living in what
Their mindset.
Their excuses. Exactly.
Their mindset, their context, their belief system is driving all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I hear that so much too. I'm calling and they're just like, listen, we're just too busy to try this. We don't have time, like you said, all of those excuses. And they don't even have, based on their prior experiences, they don't even have hope for change yet.
Bingo.
They probably tried it. Why bother? We're just going to continue as is.
An expectation. Do they have any
The expectation is failure. So why in the world would they even try? And I call it, to me, that's just so many shops are settling. And I love this question. Do dogs love bones? No, dogs love steak. They settle for bones. So many shops don't even have the hope of being able to change. They're just settling. And actually I've run a division. I owned my own company in the past and for shop owners and stuff. Your success isn't just about you. If you're settling, you're also settling for your team's lives. So what do we do about that change, and how do you break into that mindset? And it takes a shift, and it's big. I just figured we all got problems. Problems are always going to be with us, no matter what you got. So you can have the problem of settling and not trying. Those are a whole set of problems, or taking on some new technology, taking on some new things and taking that on. They're different problems. And it's just like what, which problems you want, because you're going to have them either way.
Yeah. No, the book talks a lot about changing these belief systems. There's the 3 keys to change, right? That the author presents is relate, repeat, reframe. And
right.
You've experienced change in a shop environment before, especially on that first key of relating. What's your experience been with that?
With mine, I'm sorry.
With relating.
Yeah, with relating. I mean, there's always a better way to do things or a different way to do things. And looking at, it's just, sorry, getting a little
emotional connections, right?
Yeah, right. It's hard to do because we've done it this way for so long, and they know that it works because they have been successful with it. Well, there's always, with technology and embracing change, there's just easier ways to do things. I look at like the service writers that used to have the books, and I would see that at the shop, and they would look in their book and they would look up parts, and I'm like, we have the internet right here.
why aren't we using the internet with instant access? Well, why are we still doing it like that? And that was just 10 years ago that was happening. That's such a slower way of doing things. But by like being in that shop experience and then seeing instant results by embracing change and doing something else, you could see everybody kind of smiling, even though that they're scared by doing it, because no one wants to look like they don't know anything. We're all men, we all have egos. I mean, we all want to act like we know everything, but there's just some certain things that we don't know how to do, and that's okay. We just have to have other people help us along with this.
When I first met you, that I recall that was very much the role experience that you had as someone that was bringing in something to an environment, and that being an encouraging component for the people there, and these relationships that people have with someone that's in it with
them.
Right. And I'll tell you, Craig, I don't know if I ever shared this story with you, but when we were going through our trials, I tested out like 4 or 5 different types of software at that time. And I connected with you as a person because you were more helpful than anybody else. And because of that, no, I'm serious, because of that, it was successful in our learning phase and changing, because I didn't feel like, okay, I don't know how to do this. I wasn't scared to call you up or email you because you were always super positive. So that alone was super helpful for our company, because I bought into it, you helped me, and then by that I helped other people by showing the same type of patience and understanding.
That's interesting. In the book, there's a case study with the marketing people, the people who were selling TV ads, right? And when the internet came about, there was this big shift into advertising on the internet, which was just a stupid idea for a lot of people. This is a fad, it's going to go away and that sort of thing. But there was this lady who's mentioned in the book who was very instrumental in coming alongside the people who were doing things the old way. But because she was an industry insider, had the relationships, knew the language, wasn't some young gun internet guy that doesn't know how they used to do things, but did it the way that was conventionally being done for long enough to have the respect of the people she was talking to, was able to teach them and show them that way, and creating that new kind of a culture of embracing this new technology. Those relationships are kingpin.
It kind of reminds
Absolutely.
me of another section of the book, though. When you go back to the changing your company, the IBM story, where the employee in the 80s makes the comment about the devices becoming smaller and being more desktop friendly, and not I think they quoted the refrigerator size machines they're currently selling. And the uppers brushed that idea off, because at the time they were the most powerful company in the world when it came to what they were doing. And no one's going to come and take this away. We're not going to change our practice and the way we do things because you see what's coming. And then, by 1993, in the early 90s, they were a company of, their stock was crashed. No one wanted to be anywhere associated with IBM, and they were being left in the dust. So you really it doesn't have to be the owner. It doesn't have to be the manager. It could be a technician. It could be a service writer. If somebody has that idea, that concept, by letting your employees take some responsibility of those things, they feel like they are creating and bettering the shop for themselves. And what then happens with that is they get a better sense of pride from the actions they are doing. And they're more likely to accept that change because it's being bred from within. It's not something being forced down.
But that is that's such a good point. When it comes to relating, you've got a set of employees. I know that the last company I worked at, I was over a division, and we tried to implement a bunch of change too quick. And you know what? It failed because it was forced on them. It was like, we're doing these changes. Well, they just wanted to know why. I didn't get buy-in. We just forced some changes. And so there was resistance there and it failed. But when it was like, okay, I need to relate to them in the sense that, okay, here's why we're doing it. Here's how it's going to benefit you. Here's how it benefits the company, and laid out the big picture, being able to relate to them. Then it wasn't forced on them, but it was just part of here's why, and taking the time to do it.
Yeah.
That was huge. And then when you get buy-in, You don't have workers who are just doing enough to keep their job. You've got owners that are actually owning this and wanting to do better. It reframes everything.
What was interesting about that IBM story too was that they were coming from a company that said one of their promises is they were not going to lay anybody off. And then they started laying people off. They laid 140,000 off, I think is what they said, because their computers were just so expensive. Well, then when the new CEO took over, how he emotionally charged, and they could feel that he believed in what they were going to be doing as a part of the change, and they bought into him. And then they started swinging that stuff around. So the owner, the CEO got active in the process. And I like on page 90, it says, to get a culture started, you have to believe in it, live it, show it, and be a part of it. So that's what, it's just really interesting seeing that. And as an owner, just getting in there and being active in the change process.
Absolutely. Well put. And welcome, Chris, the man with the book recommendations.
Hey, I didn't even know I was joining. Scott sent me a link, and he said, "Hey,
You
here's
just
a
click
link
the link.
where you can
Hey,
watch
I'm
the
rolling with
webinar."
it.
And I'm like,
This is
I'm like,
great.
well, I'm in the, I think I'm in the meeting. And Scott's like, yeah, you are. So, hey, change, guys. I guess you're gonna have to change your format now to listen to my opinions. But please proceed. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
This was very unplanned, by the way. I just want to watch you guys. So I'm going to try to be as quiet as Chris can be, which will not be very quiet.
We'll ask for your closing remarks because you're going to have some.
I will. Thank you. So far, what I've heard was good. Great stuff, Levi. I like what I'm hearing so far.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
No, this is exactly the direction I wanted to see this conversation go, and with good reason. We talked about the relationship component of it. The one that I want to hit on really good is the repeat key, the repetition of something. I see a lot of shops, like Michael was talking about in the beginning. We brought in the Kano model again. There's the shops that are followers. They see this as a must-have now. They want to go and do it, but then they start doing it and then they stop. This is a problem that we run into periodically. And what has to happen in order to keep them moving?
I think short-term wins. Do some small things. Send a DVI out, for instance. Do a brake job and send it to a customer that's waiting in the lobby and see their reaction. And because a lot of people have smartphones nowadays. So to dismiss that, not everybody's going to see that. Well, I watched it firsthand with older people that I wouldn't think that would have the smartphones. They're looking at the pictures and they're smiling, and they come up and they're like, "Man, that is so cool." And they got their hands down and they want to have a conversation about it. So just seeing that from an older generation, it really speaks about those short-term wins. I mean, because it was just starting off small. And there we can just build each brick, one at a time, really.
The short-term wins is so important. It's defining what success looks like when you're implementing change.
Mm-hmm.
If success is going to be the absence of problems, that's a problem, because they'll start to implement it and all of a sudden they hit some roadblocks and they're like, "See, told you it's not worth it." But when you reframe your context of how it's going to go, it's just going to like, we're going to hit some problems. Let's expect them. Let's anticipate them. And then it's just part of the process, and then celebrate those small wins. I don't know how many guys just in my time here, I've seen shops or they'll take on too much. They're like, "We want all of it." And then they're trying to institute that change. Well, gosh, that expectation's kind of high.
So then when you do all of it, you're getting really frustrated with the change process. You're not buying in, so you could be dismissive in the whole thing. Well, it's too hard for us. We're done. We're going to go back to the way that it was. And then it's a failed experiment, or maybe not a failed experiment, but I mean, I hate using words like that, but it is in a way.
Well, it goes right back to that relationship component. You're going to have this change agent you're working with. You've had a meaningful relationship with this person. They're ideally going to be the ones that help keep you on track and motivated, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's even myself. If you're, starting a diet, right? Okay, so 2 years came past from that doctor's appointment with my hypertension diagnostics, and I'm just fine the way things are going along.
People were telling you this, probably, right?
Well, even for people that I know, I would get "Oh no, Mike, you don't need to lose weight. You look fine." And that almost helped me cement my idea that no, I don't need to change anything I'm doing great. What it really took was a random post in Facebook on one of my old guy BMX groups where someone said, "Hey, we're going to do a 31-day challenge of weight loss. Who wants to join this?" I said, "You know, whatever, I'll join." I tried starting diets. I would do a week and then I would revert. And it's kind of going back to the shops. You go a week, you try it out a couple of times, you fall back. It's very easy to fall back into a habit. It's the first time you cheat on the diet. It's the first time you grab that paper inspection. Because the first time you do that, it makes it easier to do it a second time. It makes it easier to go back a second time. But if you've got somebody who's there holding you accountable for those items, and that's where this group came into play, is we were posting and we were excited about what was going on. And I saw other people's excitement. And I'm going, I want to be a part of this excitement. I want to be involved with this. So I'm going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And someone would say, "Oh man, I had a cheat day today," and everyone would come behind and rally and say, "It's great, but don't let it happen tomorrow." It's the same thing with the shop. As soon as you have that issue where you go, don't focus on the fact that you went back to that paper inspection.
Yeah.
It's just make it as a conscious effort to not do it another time after.
Yeah.
It's very easy to create a habit. It's very hard to break a habit. But it's that part where you're trying to break one habit and create a new habit. It's that period between here and there that is difficult, because it's very easy to fall back into the old way and just go, "See, it didn't work."
And that'll happen, right? And I want to go to a comment from Dave here. He says, "My two techs have bought into the DVIs for many reasons." I like the term "bought into." But it's so exciting to see a business double sales month over month. And that's the thing, is like, that's a goal. But when that's not being realized right away, because at first your techs are doing something different, but they aren't seeing that win. Like Levi was mentioning, short-term wins being so important in this. There's this moment where you're trying something new, where it's still a little clumsy, where it's still a little hard. And now you're spending more time, but you're not quite seeing that doubling of revenue yet. And so everything in you is thinking, this is hard.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the short-term wins needs to be for every aspect. It needs to be for the service writer. It needs to be for the technicians as well. And just, helping them get through that DVI, because some of that stuff can be really challenging for certain people to use and embrace technology, because they've done that. They have done written paper inspections for 20 or 30 years. So to switching over to a tablet or a phone it could be very challenging. But patience and expressing to them, "Hey man, you're doing a good job. We're gonna get through it together." And just showing that patience, showing them a positive response to that is really impactful in their process.
Yeah.
It feels really good when somebody tells you did a good job. I mean, it just does. And it doesn't have to be like small things. I think there are no small things. Every step you take is monumental in the change process.
Indeed. Chris, you were going to...
Of course, I have two comments to that. I mean, it didn't take me long before I have to make a comment. For one, I apologize for not wearing a blue shirt.
Yeah, I didn't put out the memo beyond this team.
So I like what Levi had to say in the patience, right? So going back to Michael losing, a couple pounds, right? How many times do people start that diet and then immediately get frustrated because they don't see the results? I like this term, and I just want to throw it out there, and I use it all the time. How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time, right? And this goes to what Levi was just saying, right? In what you guys were saying before, if you try and take on too much and try and eat that elephant all in one sitting, there's a high probability you're not going to be able to do it. So taking those small incremental changes gets you to where you need to go, and having the patience to understand that if you just turn the dial just a little, and then a little more, and a little more, eventually water's going to come out. At first, it's going to be a drip, but eventually it's going to be open. But if you try and open it all up, you're not ready for it, right? So I think there's two very good key components to change: small incremental change, and then being patient, waiting for that drip to turn into a waterfall.
Part of that repeat process.
That's
right.
That's interesting, Chris. You mentioned the small incremental changes. There's a was reading another book, Atomic Habits, I think was the book where he's talking about the England bike team. The England had, you know, in the Olympics, they had this bike team. They were so bad. The bike manufacturers wouldn't let them ride their bikes. They were like, no, we do not. They were as bad as it gets. So this new guy comes in and he goes, you know what? My first thing I'm going to do for this, we're going to do 10%. We're going to change 10% across the board. So we're going to change our diet 10%. We're going to change the bike design 10%. And it was small changes. And then they came up to be some of the most, you know, they really, really good team, but it was small. And he just implemented it across the board and then stayed consistent and repeated it. It's just, yeah.
And what Alan does real well in the book is, you know, by relating some of those stories, there's a paragraph or a couple of pages about the model for Alcoholics Anonymous, the 24 hours at a time, and why that is so successful, because they're taking it one day at a time, rather than saying, I'm quitting alcohol forever and that's it. They actually have a goal to work towards every single day, and that is powerful. Each day you're accomplishing a short-term win. So by doing that, it is building those bricks and just making yourself more confident.
Progress, not perfection.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that was a great chapter for a couple of reasons. They brought in the concept of delusion into that conversation too. And there's a lot of times where people are deluding themselves. And that's why groups like Alcoholics Anonymous are so important, because that's one of the big things that people are going through a change like that have to overcome, is that, like, oh, there's life without alcohol, or there's life that can go on. This was such a part of who they are. There's one part of the delusion, I think it was page 66, where they talked about the Budweiser executives. And this was the most powerful example of delusion for me in the entire book, being from Michigan, Grand Rapids with Beer City. I mean, Budweiser is not the favorite beer, right? But these executives, they go to a fine dining dinner and they actually will get that bucket of Bud sitting in a bunch of ice at this restaurant that you would never expect to see a bucket of beer and ice sitting at this fine table, but they treat it like it's this fine thing, and they begin to believe that. And obviously from anybody outside looking in, it's like, you might as well have ordered water, right? But the principle applies. And I see this with shops all the time. And we've been guilty of it in the past too. We'd be sitting in a seminar and we think, oh, we know this stuff already. We don't need that. We're already the best. We're as good as it gets. And there is nothing else out there beyond this. It can be both a positive and a negative thing to delude yourself into believing it. Great for the executive Budweiser to build a culture around their product being great, but what if it isn't the best?
And doesn't it seem like it's harder to kind of hold on to those old ideas when you know that things are changing around you, just to sit here and go, oh, that's the way we've always done it, and kind of you're fighting against it. And I see that with people. I see that with my parents, and it's really hard. I can see the pain in them, where if they just embrace that we are always going to be in this constant state of change, just like the earth is. I mean, look at the trees, you know?
Now, I love that you mentioned parents, because there is a chapter in this book about changing a loved one. We'll take the perspective too, is you can't force, but there is an emotional presence that we have that puts pressure for change on people that you need to be aware of. And that's something that he does a really good job of relating, because there are things that are very difficult to change, especially another person. It's not our responsibility to change others, but it is something you need to be aware of how that pressure that you put in there can push people one way or the other. One of the things he mentions in the book is everybody wants to change. Nobody wants to be changed.
And I'm looking at actually a comment that Chad made again, discussing how he had his technicians actually act as customers. So getting an oil change, so that they were receiving the DVIs and the text messages as the customer would. And when you put yourself in and change that perspective of how you view what's going on, when you take yourself out of the role of being the tech doing the DVI, and put yourself in the position of the customer receiving that DVI.
They don't have the frames that a customer has to understand what the big picture of what they're doing actually involves.
And what that customer is, how what you're doing in that report is affecting what the customer is seeing. It puts it into a different perspective when you're taking that ownership of you're responsible for putting this together, because this other person is going to be using that information to determine whether or not they're going to be fixing their car, spending money. And there's a great bit of responsibility that I think we don't even discuss with the techs or the advisors, that when you're putting these together, you need to be doing it as if you were doing this for your mother, for your fathers, for someone that you would want them to have all the possible information they can, because you want to do that for everybody. And getting the tech on the other side of that device, where you're seeing how it's related on the other end, can change their perspective as to what they're doing and how profound it actually becomes in the whole process of making the shop better.
That's such a good point. And Chad was successful with this probably for exactly that reason. He was a part of the process, made it repetitive in the shop, and he gave his technicians those frames. And that's just amazing. He says too, after they see that, the pictures got better, more videos were added, and they bought in at that
buy-in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Craig, I have another quote I have to throw in, because
Sure.
I think it's very pertinent about, it's not in the book, but I'm a quote guy. So this is a Bruce Lee quote
Oh,
that I came across that I really liked. And it said, "I fear not the man who practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who practiced one kick 10,000 times." And you can appreciate that, because most people don't know, but Craig knows martial arts. And is it not true that you have to practice and concentrate on one thing over and over to become an expert at it?
Oh, absolutely true. Yeah, it's really funny to watch, because this actually applies beautifully to a martial arts scenario as well. When people go into it, first thing first, new beginners, white belts, they are absolutely clumsy as all heck. And that's a hard thing. A lot of people drop out and quit right there. They don't like how they look. They got this black belt in the room. They look like they know what they're doing. I'm never going to get to that point. It's crazy. It's as simple as one of the drills we do is a shoulder roll, a simple shoulder roll. And a lot of times when we get new people doing that, have not done any kind of physical fitness, they can't do even that, and the muscles don't have that behavior, that repetition built in, and there's no ability to know how your movements actually do connect at a certain point. You should know how your body moves and where your hand is going to end at any point, but that's not stuff you practice. You're not going to have it out of the gate.
Right. And I love it that my grandson lives with us, so I've got to see him from 0 to 3 years old. And one thing I love is when that little dude was learning to sit up, it was like 1,000 attempts till he finally got up. And then when he was walking, he fell and fell and fell, but he doesn't think it's wrong yet to fall.
What a perfect
It isn't bred in it.
Yeah.
But I know what would mess it up is if we ran over when he fell and go, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh, is there something wrong with that?" It's not even in his thought process yet. He's going until to him, it's part of the process of, I'm going to climb this thing and get cookies.
Yeah.
And I'm going to build a ladder, and I'm going to build another ladder. And
you could actually hinder that change with someone by putting that pressure. And I feel like a lot of times shops run into,
or making it wrong that they failed. Like, what? No, it's part of the process.
like, what happens if you tell a technician that they need to just simply be faster, more efficient, get more cars out the door? You've told them that this is the goal, this is the reward. And of course, when you throw in some extra thing like taking pictures of a vehicle, they'd be like, well, this is keeping me from what I'm supposed to be doing. You haven't given them those frames, and they're going to resist on that sort of a thing. But when you get them that whole bigger picture, they don't care about the sales.
What about the sentence of "we are practicing on changing," or "we're practicing doing this"? Because then if you practice, there is no failure, right? That's kind of how I relate my life. I mean, I'm practicing on being better every day. Some days I might be good, some days I might not be. So, but I'm practicing at it. So it's a good mindset. And that's really what it's all about, right?
Your doctors are practicing medicine. They've got that right.
Exactly. Right.
I've tried bringing that term to the shop, guys. We're practicing auto mechanics repair.
That's just something to think about, right?
I don't know if it's something you throw on your website of your shop. Hey, we're just practicing today.
Hey,
bring it in. And we'll charge you.
Brilliant. No, that's excellent, guys. And this is one of those books, and I want to go we'll keep mentioning the book, because if you haven't already, pick up this title, because this is one of those reads you're going to constantly go through this, and you're going to be hitting these chapters. They go, oh, this is like this scenario in the shop. Oh, this is like that scenario, and it's going to help the owners and managers in particular get some frames in mind for why some of the things you tried to do flop and other things just went really, really well, and make a study of that. This is why we're hosting this conversation.
Hey, Craig, I got a quote for you real quick. One of my favorites in the book. I'm going to have to pop on my Craig glasses and look down my nose at this thing. The point of change or die is that even when we think the situation is hopeless, there's usually a different way, a way out. It's simply that we can't see it because it's outside our conceptual frame, or we've stopped trying new solutions because we're demoralized by past failures.
Yeah.
So it's just getting that little bit of hope that changes everything. When you talk to other people and they're like, that dude is just like me, I can do this, or that shop was just like our shop. Okay, there is some hope, and it's a choice. But you get a little hope, you get some motivation, and realize that I am where I am today by my choices. It's in my power. Okay, so I can choose something. And like something that helped me through really difficult times in my life, especially one of the times was when I want to quit dipping. Oh my gosh, that was tough. Was realizing that I've got problems either way I choose. I've got problems if I choose to keep dipping, or I've got to do a new set of problems when I try to quit. But it's my choice. I'd rather have the problems associated with trying to be better, to grow a business, to be better for my employees. Those are the problems I want.
Mhm.
Now, the other ones are still waiting. I mean, either way, either choice, if the shop goes, it's too hard and we're going to stay where we are.
Can't
Okay, what's the cost and benefits? Okay, it's a choice. But
And
get a
that's
little
the-
hope.
Yeah,
Other shops have done it.
I'm too busy to do this.
I hear that
Sometimes
a
you're
lot.
worried about car count more than like a good inspection. Don't worry about the car count. Let's work on less cars and do better inspections and bring the ticket averages up, because we're doing those good inspections and we're doing total car care for our customers by doing them a service, by letting them know that it is fully checked out. Whether they do it all or not, at least we presented the information to them so they can make that decision, right?
This reminds me loosely on the chapter on the GM factory.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the book, this is cited in there. There was where it was over on the West Coast. That factory had unruly workers. GM had been given up on it. The main motivation was yelling at people to get more done, and they would literally, like, someone passes out, they keep dragging you along the line with it. But that line would not
Yeah.
stop. Right. And this factory eventually, GM gave up on these people, thought this is the most unruly group of factory workers in the world. And Toyota comes in. Now, originally they were going to bring in new staff, but the UAW said, nope, you got to use these people in this country, the union here and everything else. That's how it's going to expand. It's like, fine. They took the staff, and their whole way of doing business so dramatically different. They started putting out cars with hardly any defects, super efficient. And it all began with trusting people and making them a part of that process. This, I feel, is so relatable to the shops.
It is.
The people became the problem in those situations. It's like when you're trying to implement change and when you don't have buy-in, and you see it's the team. I can't get my team to do it. Instead of leadership going, well, maybe I need to try a different approach and get some buy-in, empower them, show the value. I've been in that situation where it was like, we were trying to get this group of developers to track their time, and they were too busy to track their time. But I was like, I have no idea what you're doing. I don't know what you're working. How do you? And the first thing I did was implement a big change and go do it. And they didn't know. And there was like, well, there was resistance that failed. When it was like, okay, hold on a sec. This is actually going to help you. It's going to help me. I can prioritize better what's going on. And then yeah, the team became the problem. That's a bad situation.
Well, and in that chapter 2, they talked about how the GM executives at the corporate level still adhere to this policy X idea of motivating through fear and force, as opposed to, how a model Y. I guess today we'd recognize the newer model as something millennials would appreciate, being a part of the process, being involved and that sort of thing. And this was coming up in the 60s and 70s and 80s and early 90s for sure. This wasn't new to millennials. I see this trend starting a lot sooner. It's just a better way of.
And the concept for the General Motors motor or the General Motors model was that line workers could not stop the line at any cost under General Motors direction. When Toyota came in, they had the ability to make choices to say that product is not good enough, stop the line, and then the defects went down. And they actually cared about the product instead of being beaten down going, oh, I don't care if that goes through. So think about that. I don't care if that goes through instead of being a part of it. If you got the whole team, I seen there was a note where it says, I think Dave said it. One of the things I always try to keep in mind, treat your employees the same as you treat your customers, which is,
That's great.
It is great. It really is, because they are every part of the business. I mean, they are just as important as everybody. I mean, just as important as you, right?
In that situation, Toyota valued their opinion. They valued the people.
Yeah.
And that's actually where that lean development, I think, came out of that Toyota process. I mean, the whole wave of lean development, lean manufacturing came out of that. But it was, yeah, they showed value, and they're like, they were capable. They weren't the enemy. They weren't the problem.
Yeah.
It becomes a trust factor. If you hired these people, and look at this from a shop standpoint, you're the person who hired these employees. You hired them for a reason. You have to have some level of trust in that employee for you to even hire them in the first place. Why do you take away that trust once they become an employee? You want to empower those employees to be able to feel that they can make a change within the shop that will benefit other people. And when they get that ownership of things, when you give your staff that trust and that ownership of a process, you give them a job, a task. Hey, can you come up with a way that we might be able to get 2 more cars done a day? And a simple task. And if you let them come up with their own way of doing it and try it, they're going to be more likely to try to adapt something they created themselves.
Yeah.
It's not going to have the same excuses, but it's a sense of pride within the employee themselves that, wow, did this owner just tell me to do something that could affect his business? He's trusting me with it. Wow, he believes in me. And giving somebody a little bit of belief in themselves goes a tremendous amount of way, especially when, I've been in shops where micromanagement was the way of life. It was this person, you had your top person, the top person might not even have been in the shop. This actually comes to my dealership experience more than anything. The higher ups at the dealership, I had people, they'd never worked a day in their life in a car service department, ever. Had no clue what happened in there. All they knew were spreadsheets, and they made every decision based on spreadsheets. And what ended up eventually happening was that shop ended up going from one of the top shops on the East Coast for productivity down towards the bottom over a 3-year period. And it wasn't until they brought in another new person for the 4th time, and that person said, hey, let me control the service department. You hired me for this purpose. My 10, 15 years experience of managing shops. Allow me to just run this shop and let me see what I can do in 1 year. And they did. And the shop went right back up to their high level performing because they empowered that employee. And when he was empowered and not being controlled by a spreadsheet up top, the staff was more willing to work for this person because he was showing them that we don't have to do things this particular way. We can change this, we can change that. We can make this our own process. And when he empowered the employees to make that their own process, their turnover rate went down, their comebacks went down, their RO growth went up, and their dollars per RO went up. It's amazing what that empowerment does when you stop micromanaging every detail of what's happening as with an iron fist.
Decentralized command, and that's why special forces. I love the way the Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, those guys operate. The people who are going on the mission plan the mission. The vision comes from the top, but they equip the team to run, and they trust them, and they hired them for a reason. And those guys plan their own because they've empowered the smaller team, that decentralized command. So, yeah, it's along those lines. Empower your team and watch them go.
You know, what would be a cool way to do that with the technicians is let them create a DVI sheet for themselves. So then you could have technicians and have multiple
Nice.
inspections. Since we can do that, and you just have them, hey, let's all create an inspection, and then we can bounce ideas off each other to see what works. And there might not be the one model fits all for everybody, but it's getting them to buy into it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great, guys. And there's one passage, as you guys are saying this, it keeps jumping out at me. Page 69, it's in the chapter about criminal reform, actually. But the sense of community instilled the notions of accountability and responsibility. And that's what's happening in some of the more meaningful implementations of change is when you've started to trust people, they have a community, a culture that develops around that. It creates its own sense of accountability, and it just keeps going from there and replicates from there. That's an example in Amazon too, like how the first dozen employees or so really sets the culture for the rest of the company that's going to build up around them.
I was gonna ask you guys, have you ever had a training session where you get teed up and you call the owner and then they say, okay, and they haven't told their team yet? I've actually hopped on a call a couple of times and then they were just like, now who are you? And I'm just like, you guys are, it was just the owner implemented it and just kicked it off. And I was like, oh snap. I've got to buy and get, I was like, they were very unhappy, and weird enough, it didn't quite work. I don't know.
It's amazing how sometimes you can get that sense from from the first call, based on how they react to.
Yeah.
The first time you ask them about something, no, are you willing to make that change? Well, no, we don't want to change that. We want to force what we currently do into a new process. But we don't want to make any changes.
That is more common than anything else.
And so what you're saying is you want to change without changing.
There are two things I hate: change and the way things are.
Right?
Oh, okay.
You know, one of the things this book always, it really, this is a funny thing about it. I'm a Pittsburgher. A lot of people know, that I'm from Pittsburgh, and a Pittsburgher true and true is a Steeler fan. It's how we were born. It's how we were raised. And currently the Steelers have a coach named Mike Tomlin, who is one of the winningest coach in NFL history. But one of his major flaws is something he constantly says: this is the Steeler way. This is the way we've always done things. This is how it is. And for years, I've kind of gone, wow, the Steelers stick to their guns, and this is, but when you look at it, when was the last time the Steelers have won anything? 2007? 2007? Last time they were in a Super Bowl, 2010. And then people will come back with, well, he's never had a losing season. Okay, yeah, he's had quite a few 8-8s though. But we never had a losing season. Okay, so great. There's this thing where you can stay what you're doing, and you can keep that way and just barely keep your head above water, which is what they do. They never lose, they're never bad, but they haven't been great in some time, because you're never going to get to the status of being great by doing the same thing that's kept you above water for the last 5 or 6 years. How do you expect to all of a sudden one day go from 9-7 to 13-3 by doing the same thing when it's only ever gotten you 9-7?
Called hope. Nice. Detroit Lions fans have had
as well, but you can't.
Yeah.
When you look at that from even at that level, I mean, here's a guy who is the second winningest coach in NFL history, but yet he still feels that change is bad. He doesn't want to change the culture. He doesn't want to change the way things are going. But yet you see that maybe the change would help, because right now you guys have just kind of been here for the last 11 years. It's been status quo. That's great. And it's
comfortable.
Your wins and losses have been status quo, and the first round knockouts in the playoffs have been status quo. And yeah, you've never had
it's a great example, and maybe they just make a few changes and they could be the next elite team.
And
redefine success. In the book, do you remember where GM, they were doing their QC, their defects measurements, and they said it's 100, yes. Right? And then they were just like, they were coming out with 60s, and they're like, whoa, we need to make it 100 where they bump it up. They're just like, okay, it's 140.
The
So the
scale.
losses came in and they're like, we're back to 100.
Yeah, they put the scale up to about 140 is perfect. And so when you got close to that 100 level, they started celebrating that as though
Yeah,
that's
they're like, hey, this is.
Greg, I gotta tell this story about being a shop owner, and this happened to me.
yeah. Let's wrap it up with your comments on this, Chris.
Very, very early about the power of change. And this is the first shop. We're a couple years into it. We had implemented a whole bunch of digital processes, auto text bees. It was the home. We were texting customers, digital inspections, all this stuff before it was popular. And this guy was sitting in the lobby, sat there for about 45 minutes. And finally, my manager says, hey, Chris, you need to come talk to this guy. This guy's name was Tim, and he was wearing his suit. And I saw on his lapel, he had a name tag from a brand, a very popular brand at the time. They're no longer around. And he goes, dude, and this was an auto shop brand. Don't want to say who they are, it doesn't matter. But they were big, they were nationwide. And he goes, my nephew came here last week and got some service, and he said he was blown away with your operation. So he said, Uncle, you got to come up here and you got to see how this works. And he goes, Chris, I've been sitting here for 45 minutes. He goes, I'm blown away. Your customer service is excellent. The way you deal with your customers, your whole digital adoption, all this stuff is just excellent. And I go, wow, I mean, that's huge coming from you, right? Because you're this big chain guy, you have all this money. I said, it's really hard for me being a small business owner to do all this. And he looks at me, he goes, Chris, I want to tell you one thing. He goes, burn this into your brain and do not forget this. He goes, if I want to make a change in my organization, he goes, it takes years because it's got to go up this ladder rung and then this ladder rung and then this ladder rung and then this person's got it. And by the time it gets to the top, it's not even what the original idea was anymore. He goes, Chris, you remember, as a small business owner, you can change everything right now.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, whoa. And he goes, you don't have to wait for anybody to approve your changes. You can just change. So I think that's what we really need to understand as business owners. You're the captain. If you don't like the direction you're going, change the direction, because you don't have to go through 18 levels of people agreeing with you or telling you why you can't do it. Now, people are going to give you their opinion, but you have the ultimate say in the direction your business is going to go. So you make the change. Realize how it's going to do. Read the book and get a good game plan together on how to change. But I think it's definitely worth it, right? Be like everybody else or set your path. Thank you, Craig, for my
absolutely.
allowing me to join too. Thanks for allowing me to say some stuff. You guys are great.
We should have invited you.
Yeah.
I don't like me anymore. I think we're going to change the leadership in the organization is what I'm hearing.
Well, hey, this was a great wrap up. And guys, the book is Change or Die. Last chapter, spoiler alert here, is titled Change and Thrive. Why isn't it the title of the book? Maybe it'd be more appealing instead of less scary. It sounds like you're forcing something. Well, I think the lesson is right there, though. That fear of dying, that's not enough. But simultaneously, the same things that keep us, the same excuses that would keep someone from losing weight or being healthier or changing their businesses, keep you from thriving. And all those concepts apply. And once you can recognize those concepts, you can overcome them. There is another way that is better than the way you're doing right now. And it's good to try. Any closing remarks, guys?
I like page 188 as a closing remark. It says, people aren't going to listen to you unless you're a part of their world and you appreciate it. We are a part of the world. We appreciate it. So thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Levi.
I just want to say thanks to Chris to empowering us to do things like this. These are things and principles in the book. It kind of coincided with my start of my diet, which, by the way, for the first time I have been able to stick to now for 7 weeks now. I've been on this diet. Nice. And I'm down 40 pounds officially as of this morning. I started reading the book the weekend before I started the diet, and I recommended the book to several people in the group that was doing this diet challenge. And a lot of people picked it up, and we actually had some discussions in that group thread about the book, and it really helped me put a lot of things in focus, from shops to my personal life to work life. It was just a good read. And I now recommend it to everybody I talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Chris, thank you for empowering us as a team to have these, like you didn't even know this was going on. That's actually kind of cool. So I guess my parting comment would be, don't settle. I mean, there's a cost and benefit to everything, right? So changes I think our brains are wired to be safe and keep us safe from dangerous stuff. You got to push past it. But for an owner or a leader or a manager of an organization, when you're fighting change, just remember, if you settle, you're settling for your employees' lives too. And the success is not all about you, and so it's you kind of like what Navy SEALs say. They say embrace the suck, for the person it's going to make you into. So sure, it's going to be hard. Some other people have done it. Surround yourself with call some other shops who've done it, but do it because it's absolutely worth it. So thank you for having me on this, Craig.
Absolutely, Scott. You've been great. Thank you so much. Folks, this has been a pleasure. We appreciate everyone who's watched this with us, our clients that are with us today as well. And thanks for anyone who's interested in partnering with us for meaningful change in the industry. This is what we're about, and we're glad to be on the journey with you. Thanks for watching.